to have like I think 4 or 5 major glaciers in Mount Kenya, but now we only have 1 remaining, and they're saying it will not even be there in the next 10 years.
She's in this hotel, air-conditioned, 5-star hotel. She's there for a conference or something of that sort. And when she looks out the window, she can see this farmer cultivating up and down the slope. Long story short, she makes the argument that it doesn't matter how many conferences and big meetings, and if we shuffle from hotel to hotel discussing development and conservation and policy, if you're not engaging with that farmer who is cultivating up and down the slope in Yaoundé, which is a metaphor for the people at the grassroots, then we are wasting time. And I think we've been doing plenty of that. We still do plenty of that.
We believe that wildlife starts from the door. From your doorstep, technically, and you are all interlinked with it. It's like a cycle of life. Your water, your electricity, there's a way this contributes to natural resources.
They know it is wrong to keep feeding our farmers with agrochemicals, keep feeding them with hybrid seeds, because at the end of the day, these farmers cannot afford this, because they need to take loans for them to be able to afford the seeds. So you are impoverishing the farmers. Who some of them are like our fathers, our grandparents. You're impoverishing them.
The story of the hummingbird is about this huge forest being consumed by a fire. All the animals in the forest come out, and they are transfixed as they watch the forest burning, and they feel very overwhelmed, very powerless, except this little hummingbird. It says, I'm going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearest stream, takes a drop of water, and puts it on the fire, and goes up and down, up and down, up and down, as fast as it can. In the meantime, all the other animals, much bigger animals like the elephant with a big trunk, could bring much more water. They are standing there helpless, and they are saying to the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You're too little. This fire is too big. Your wings are too little. And you're big, so small, you can only bring a small drop of water at a time. But as they continue to discourage it, it turns to them without wasting any time and tells them, I am doing the best I can. And that to me is what all of us should do. We should always feel like a hummingbird.
Passion is an amazing feeling. When you're passionate about what you do, you have everything around your world just works right. My name is Anthony Ching. I'm a wildlife ecologist and a conservation photographer. I run a platform called Tony Wild. Tony Wild is a platform that uses photography to link people and conservation science. So mostly what we do is we use photos and photo stories to tell the public, who are our major audience, how important wildlife is.
My name is Claire Nasike Akelo. I prefer to be called Nasike. I am the third recipient of the Wangari Maathai Scholarship. I'm also the founder of the Hummingbird Foundation. Basically, this is an initiative that aims at providing school-going children with nutritious vegetables, and we do this through food gardens that we help set up in the schools. I also work at Greenpeace Africa as a food campaigner. Basically, my job involves training farmers on ecological farming, encouraging them how to grow food without harming the environment, using indigenous seeds, without using agrochemicals, and basically just them supporting food sovereignty,
Kenyan greetings. So my name is Wangari Maathai, born 37 years ago in Nyeri, in a village called Kiangima in Odhaya. Not very far from where Wangari Maathai actually was born. Because that's the neighboring district, Tetu. I went to school in Othaya, in the slopes of the Aberdares actually. So I grew up seeing the Aberdares as I went to school, as I went to the farm, as I did everything. Basically, now probably half of my life, that's where it has been spent. And then my high school also still there. But then I came to Nairobi for college. That's now where probably issues of environmental awareness and activism and all that were, like, I became conscious of them.
My name is Kendi Borona. I am a conservationist. I primarily have worked with communities in conservation in different parts of Africa. Currently, I teach at the School for Field Studies Kenya program, which is based in southern Kenya in the Amboseli Savo ecosystem.
When I began this particular mission of taking pictures, everybody in my circle was like, these days we just see you taking pictures and doing blogs. But I didn't respond to them because I felt that I had something extra to offer than just taking pictures and doing blogs. And what really made me feel that my image is actually impacting people is when you get inboxes and tell me, man, you're doing an amazing job and I love your images. That's an inbox. And then when you meet people in public places, like, wow, man, your images are the best, like, they're amazing. And they communicate a lot. And you'll get people attribute birds with you, even people who are not in the conservation space. Now for me, that is, I have made a step in to making people understand that conservation is important. And being in a photography society at the same moment, you get people who are not even in the conservation space understand how important birds are. One interesting one is when I went home. And there was a bird around the corner, and my mom was like, "There is this bird that comes here every day, so you go take a picture of it." And that is how it changed. That is how I realized that this is what I'm meant to do: help my society understand that wildlife is important. Like the little things that they don't take for granted is actually important.
Since the time now I started working on my doctoral studies, and then after that, and working with communities in that research project, which was one of the areas that she actually started the Green Belt movement right in the 70s. So I got to work with communities who actually worked with her. And that really influenced me. Their community members influenced my thinking and challenged my thinking in terms of what we know conservation to be and how we should approach conservation to be. Generally speaking, in the conservation field, in the African context, it is thought that Africans do not know conservation. Africans need to be taught conservation. Africans are destroying everything, and they need to be taught how to take care of the bounty that God has blessed them with, preferably by a white person. But here I am working with elders, 60, 70, 80-year-old people. And the kind of connection that they have with the environment is so deep and so philosophical. And the kind of work that they've been doing over the years, there's such a serious commitment in terms of safeguarding the landscape, but also safeguarding their livelihoods. And they understand there is a direct link between their livelihoods and this ecosystem. But it also goes beyond that, it's a spiritual ecosystem, it's a sacred site, and also that this is the site from where they believe their independence came from, that our independence was derived from this forest. So it has that importance that goes beyond just even the ecology of the forest because of the Mau Mau rebellion in the forest.
Our aim was to teach kids about the environment, but then as I delved further, I let came to realize that some of these children used to go to school on an empty stomach. You know, being in Mathare, their parents could probably only afford 1 meal or 2 meals a day. So I thought of a way in which I can actually make learning about the environment interesting for these kids. So, you know, they told me we don't have food. So I thought, okay, maybe if I start teaching them how to grow vegetables or how to grow something they can actually take home, then these kids would be interested. So first of all, I started growing mulberries. You know, mulberries really mature quickly. So we grew the first, there were 6 trees of mulberries. And then they matured, the kids ate them. So when I went to the school the next time, the kids were like, oh, teacher, we finished the mulberries. I'm like, oh, you didn't wait for me to come or even at least take a picture. Like when the mulberries were mature, they're like, oh, the kids from primary school ate everything. So, you know, that was like motivation for me. All the time I would go and find the mulberries are watered, everything is good. So eventually we moved from having just one school to now move to a second school, which is like a children's home. So the reason for moving to children's home, of course, we wanted to also expand and reach a wider audience of school-going children, but it was also to just give like some sort of hope, engage the kids in the children's home in some environmental activity, you know, just getting them to do things that they would otherwise not do, because, you know, agriculture, you know, touching the soil is often associated with poverty, yeah. So getting them to understand that this environment, this is where we get our food from, this is what keeps us healthy, this is what actually makes us. So if I'm able to protect it, then I will lead a healthy life. So that way the hummingbird progressed until to what it is now.
As Ecumenic, we are really working with the community forest associations, and I'll give you a very like every Saturday we are moving. We head out from Nairobi to the either to the Aberdares or to the Rift or even to Kambani, and all these places we are working with the communities, and the forest communities associations are also doing the seedlings. They're also guiding us the visitors into the forest to see all the attractions, and even just walking the forest itself, nothing else, just walking and feeling that the beautiful air, because we don't have it here in the city. And you can even hear the people walking that you're saying, oh, this air is so fresh, this space is so beautiful. I wish we could have more of these spaces, you know. And so in that way, this community that you're working in, we are giving them a new meaning to this forest, because before they just, when they see this tree, they think this tree is maybe timber, or it's for firewood, or. But now when we come there and they are seeing people enjoying just walking this forest, they are like, okay, so I get my income at the end of the day, and the tree is still here. For me, that makes me feel so great.
There are numerous challenges in the conservation field. Broadly speaking, if you look at the global context, we seem to be on a very dangerous, slippery slope. If you look at climate change, things like climate change or loss of biodiversity, or biodiversity in terms of both wildlife and also plants, too much consumption or extraction from the environment, we appear to be at war with the planet. So if you look at it from the broader perspective, generally we are not doing that well or well. So I think we can do better, generally speaking, at a global level, especially on things like climate change, especially given the fact that those who are responsible for the mess are not the ones who feel the impact.
You're jumping in front of vehicles. I definitely came to know Wangari Maathai as someone who was fighting for the green spaces in Nairobi, defending, making sure that Uhuru Park was secure, making sure that Karura Forest was secure. And now growing up, because I spent so much time in Karura Forest, every time I pass that sign where actually it's put there that in commemoration of that time when Wangari Maathai stood ground, that Karura should not be developed into real estate, you feel good because you understand how much this resource is important to this concrete jungle that we have now.
I advocate for environmental conservation, environmental protection, and I advocate for farmers growing food in an ecological way. That basically means I don't agree with the industrial agriculture model that is being portrayed today. The industrial agriculture model of, using a lot of agrochemicals on our farms, using chemical fertilizers, using GMO seeds, I don't agree with that. And it's like you're killing their source of income, but you are speaking what is right. You're standing up for what is right, what we need to do to protect our environment, what we need to do to protect our soil, protect the organisms that enable us to produce food, Yeah, so I think it takes a lot of courage, and that is something that I sit back and, sometimes you look at why you're doing things, you sit back and you're like, I've taken this journey, and just like this lady, Professor Wangari Maathai, I'm going to try and exhibit some courage to speak up in what I believe in, even if my voice shakes. I will do that. Yeah, there are lots of times I've spoken up and my voice was cracking, but then I'm like, no, this is the right thing. You give yourself a pat on the back and you're like, keep going, this is the right thing. Yeah. So for me, it's all about courage in what I do and what I believe in.
Wildlife is part and parcel of a circle of life. You mess up with it, it cleans you up. Because if you mess up with the forests, you won't have water in your taps. If you mess up with soil formations in terms of putting waste, you won't get enough food. Because all the microbes that are important in actually making the soils more fertile or improving the soil fertility, your crop produce will be less. I don't want to talk about rain because that is what people talk about mostly when they talk about trees and rain. But trees have very many other importance. The windbreaks, they host other wildlife. They have medicinal values depending on which type of tree. Yeah. So wildlife is important, and people should look beyond tourism. Tourism should be the last one on the list when you're talking about wildlife importance.
Sometimes I feel so bad because people have this distance themselves from you. This is without trees you are off. But because you probably maybe you're not seeing it, you and touch it. Sometimes you take it for granted. But basically that is and probably for me, because I have been in a space where I have lacked oxygen. I know how important it is because I go to the high mountains. I also go to the lower of the lowest, and in those interactions with different species of nature, I have come to understand if you can protect this kind of an environment, because this is the kind of an environment where there are trees. It's covering for the deficit of where places that tree would not naturally grow. And when people are cutting the trees and they don't have that understanding, it's upon ourselves, especially to make them conscious about this. And I'm not talking about people who have not gone to school, or I'm talking even people who are educated but the formal education, but they are not conscious about things. Yeah, I'm not talking about going to school. I'm talking about being conscious of how things are connected with each other. We are all connected. The organism down there, we are all one thing. And one thing is affected, even if we don't notice that impact at that moment, it will go around and come and bite us at some point. And by protecting the ecosystem and making them remain as natural as I understand, probably with the technological advancement and all that, some things will not remain as they are. But as long as we can try and minimize that, I think it will be really nice.
When you're invited for conferences and you're the only one speaking for the farmer, advocating for the environment, advocating for growing food in a manner that does not harm the environment, which is against what is being pushed around, it takes a lot of courage for me to do that. Most of the times, you feel like, I could as well just agree with the masses, but then you sit back and remember how clean the water in Lake Victoria used to be, how clean the water in River Nzoia used to be. I speak about River Nzoia and Lake Victoria because that's where I come from.
I think one of our greatest legacies is not even the ecological restoration work, in my view, but it's the changing of mindsets of people. When I was doing my research in the Nyandarua forested ecosystem, I would meet people who would tell me, both young and old, that Wangari Maathai helped me to understand myself, to look into myself and understand who I am. She also taught me to understand that the environment is mine. That's a critical statement. And she also taught me that it's my responsibility to take care of it, not just for myself, but also for other people within this particular community. Shifting the thinking or how people think. I think that's a very difficult thing, and I think she achieved that.
I feel we are being boxed into some given space, and issues are just going on from development to wildlife extinction, and we're just talking about them like it's casual. People have to take responsibilities of our actions, because it's way important to conserve. And Prof. Wangari Maathai did her part, and I'm inspired by her in terms of what I do. So Wangari's saying of the little things that you do can actually have an impact. It has been part of me, as much as I may not have so much history about her in terms of my interactions, but I'm actually implementing a legacy, but now in a different way, in a different approach.
Some of my favorite quotes from Professor Wangari Maathai are she said her little thing was planting trees. What's your little thing? And for me, this is just not about a little thing. This is about that tiny thing that I'm really passionate about that can create a ripple effect. So I always go back to this quote and what is that little thing that I'm doing that will create that ripple effect, will create a change.
As you touch the soil, feel the connection of something more important and something more bigger than even yourself, that even generations that will come will live to enjoy and walk through this forest and say there were people who did some amazing thing before us. For the next generation, even for my son, that's what I keep telling him. When you're doing something, feel it, do it with love, do it to your best, and if you have not found that thing yet, don't settle. Keep looking, and because once you find it, you will know this is your space. I struggled with so many things coming to forming Hikemania. I struggled with employment. I thought maybe office work was not interesting. I went to field work, but still I struggled with it. But then I remembered one time I did something, and it brought so much life to me, and that's hiking. And that is when I thought, what can I do, and how can I use it to impact other people? And that's how Hikemania was born 4 years ago. And it has been a beautiful journey of impacting community and even building myself, and even being a better role model for my son. I mean, so for the next generation of everyone, even anyone, because there's no you are late to do the thing that inspires you. So get out there and just do something that you really love.
I feel we need to do more. We need to do more. We are limiting ourselves, and we need to do more. There are so many challenges right now as compared to 10 years ago that need to be addressed, and I feel the young people currently are actually spearheading that drive with a much more intensity as compared to the older generation, because we actually are feeling the impact of environmental destruction and poor leadership in terms of environmental management. So we need to go past Professor Wangari Maathai's shoes, and it's only possible if young people can actually step up. And I believe that young people in the country right now are actually doing an amazing job. They might be doing them in the small spaces, but if you put them all combined in one room, trust me, it is a movement that, when given the right resources and right opportunities, so much can happen in this country in terms of environmental issues. Yeah.
The other project I've been working on lately is the institution I work for, which is Wangari Maathai Memorial Garden. And this garden, as the name suggests, is in memory of her work life, struggle, passion, and interventions in the various spaces that she worked in. So this garden now consists of 600 trees, and the garden is designed to be a space of 600 trees. These are indigenous trees, fruit trees, a few exotic tree species, and it's designed to be a space for teaching, for learning, for relaxation, as well as a community demonstration garden, to see that you can actually plant trees in your landscapes and they can thrive. And the trees are doing very well. The garden was inaugurated last year, at the end of 2019, by the chairman of the Greenbelt movement, Ms. Marion Kamau, in the presence of community members. And we see it as just planting a seed, because as Wangari Maathai said, when you plant trees, you plant seeds of peace and hope. And this is just a small project to start, hopefully to scale it upwards and to scale it outwards within the landscape. Just using a tree as an entry point into discussing many issues in terms of environmental conservation, cultural restoration or cultural revitalization, food and seed sovereignty, and general ecosystem and human health. So ultimately, what we are working to achieve, or what we aim to achieve there, is to work towards creating what she referred to as a canopy of hope.